continuing commitment of the Children's Defense Fund and Marian Wright Edelman. Now, I will admit, coming here tonight wasn't the easiest thing for me. There have been a few times this past week when all I wanted to do was just to curl up with a good book or our dogs and never leave the house again. But if there's anyone who knows how to pick yourself up and get back on your feet and get to work, it is Marian. And she has been doing it all her life, and she has been helping the rest of us do it too. I am as inspired by Marian today as I was the first time I met her 45 years ago. And she told the story. I was a young law student. I had lots of hopes and expectations about what a law degree would enable me to do. I had the words of my Methodist faith ringing in my ears: do all the good you can for all the people you can in all the ways you can, as long as ever you can. And she was the crusading legal activist, also a graduate of Yale Law School. And she was translating her faith into a life devoted to children's service and social justice. Observing that, being part of that, is one of the greatest gifts anyone has ever given me. Because I often thought about Marian's journey, about the stony roads she walked, the bitter rods she endured, and how she never lost her faith and kept her eyes on the prize. I think of her taking the bar exam in Mississippi, the first black woman ever to do so, and then opening offices for the NAACP and a Head Start program for children who desperately needed it. I think of her with Robert Kennedy in a tiny shack in the Delta, opening his eyes to the realities of poverty in America. I think of her with Dr. Martin Luther King Jr., starting the Poor People's Campaign and dreaming of an America of equality and opportunity. You have to look at Marian's life and ask, how did she beat the odds? When so many gave up the hopes of those early days. For Marian, it has always been about children and families. That's what matters, and that's what has kept her going. Helping to open public schools to children with disabilities in the 1970s, an effort I was honored to be part of. Working to expand Medicaid in the 1980s to cover more pregnant women and more children in need. Standing with me and others in the 1990s to create the Children's Health Insurance Program, improve foster care, and create early Head Start. Fighting in recent years to build a bipartisan movement to dismantle the school-to-prison pipeline and reform our criminal justice system, especially for juveniles, and spending countless hours mentoring and training the next generation of leaders and activists at Haley Farm. Under Marian's leadership, the Children's Defense Fund works to give every child a healthy start, a head start, a fair start, a safe start, and a moral start in life. And I cannot think of a more noble or necessary mission. No matter what the setbacks, she has always believed in the words of Dr. King, often repeated by President Obama: the arc of the moral universe is long, but it bends toward justice. Now, sometimes it can feel awfully long. Believe me, I know. But I also know it does bend. It bends toward justice because people like Marian and so many of you, and there are people in this audience I have had the privilege of working with and admiring for so many decades, you refuse to stop pushing, and when you get knocked down, you back up. I often quote Marian when she says that service is the rent we pay for living. Well, you don't get to stop paying rent just because things don't go your way. I know many of you are deeply disappointed about the results of the election. I am too, more than I can ever express. But as I said last week, Our campaign was never about one person or even one election. It was about the country we love and about building an America that is hopeful, inclusive, and big-hearted. I didn't get into public service to hold high office. "45 years ago, that would have seemed an absolute, incredibly wrong-headed view. But I did decide to be an activist, to use my law degree to help kids. Every child deserves to have the opportunity to live up to his or her God